Analogue, creators of aftermarket systems, are coming back with a new one.
Yeah, brand new way to take your Game Boy games on the go and in HD.
But is it worth your time?
Hot take!
We've talked about the Mega SG, the Analogue NT.
Horrible systems.
Super NT. You know, they make so many systems. They're not horrible.
No, it's the complete opposite of that. Analog, well, go ahead.
Oh, they're the best. Like, they are the best systems if you are looking to play retro video game consoles that they at least support.
These are people that really love just the legacy of these systems. They create everything from scratch, and they're FPGA-based systems, which basically means that they can run games off of their original form factor, like carts, and the cart believes that it's being played on and the system it was meant to be played on, right?
So basically, an FPGA is a very powerful chip, and it's very, very fast. And the idea is, instead of emulating the software and hardware in a weird way, they're basically replicating the entire system on a chip. So it's a very smart way to go about it, but we've been wondering what their next system was going to be for a long time. I thought PlayStation, personally. I thought that's where they were going.
I think a lot of the enthusiasts out there were thinking that maybe it'd be the TurboGrafx, because there's been a lot of people talking about that recently. But we did know that not a lot of people have been touching the sort of handheld, like FPGA-based handheld console market. We've seen some devices, like the BitBoy devices, some things that have done emulation, and they've been, like, it's varied. Some things have been pretty good, but nothing has been as accurate as what you do get with an FPGA-based system.
That's true.
And now we have just that. It's the Analogue Pocket. They announced that they're going to be releasing this unit in 2020. The price point's $199, which I think it's around the same sort of price point they've had for the Mega SG as well, a little bit below that. But I think it's fair, because there's a lot going on with this tiny handheld device.
Yes.
You want to get into that?
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's get into that. This is kind of from Analogue's own, in their own words, because this was just a teaser. They're going to be relaying more information fairly soon. Okay, they're labeling this a multi-video game portable handheld. There's a good reason for that, because it's not necessarily going for just one system this time. It's going for multiple. So we've had the Mega SG, we've had the Super NT, and these have been focusing mainly on one console with some other adapters and stuff. But here, out of the box, we have Game Boy, we have Game Boy Color, and we have Game Boy Advance. Now this is exciting enough. This is exciting enough. I was saying, because you properly said when they teased that they're going to make an announcement today that they're going to be announcing a Game Boy, some sort of a Game Boy system. I was like, they have to have, like, if I'm going to be really invested in this thing, they need to have Game Boy Advance support as well as Game Boy Color, and we're seeing that. I am invested, but not just that. You joked about a system that this could be compatible with.
I did.
What was that system?
Game Gear.
Game Gear,
and
Shane.
Look, if you look at that image, folks, look at that. Look at that image.
Oh,
I actually have Mortal Kombat 2.
The best Game Gear game
It's so
ever.
bad. I'm a huge Game Gear fan. It's one of my all-time favorite systems. I know I'm alone on that hill, but it's a system I really liked. I grew up with it, and there's a bunch of games on here that are really good. There are some games on here that are so amazing that people have missed out on that I think it's a shame. So seeing this system have the ability to play that is a very big deal in my mind. But it's not just Game Gear.
That's true. Game Gear, as well as Geo Pocket Color, Atari Lynx, and more.
Yes.
What else could we be seeing?
Well,
maybe those little scanny cards from the Game Boy Advance days?
I don't know. If I had to take a guess...
The Wonderswan?
The Wonderswan? Jeez. The reason why I don't think we'd see the Wonderswan, for those of you that don't know, the Wonderswan was
the R-Zone?
Not the R-Zone. Oh my god, the R-Zone.
Continue.
The reason why, if you don't know what the Wonderswan is, we covered it on Rerez years back. The Wonderswan is a system that was made by Gunpei Yokoi. He originally created the Game Boy at Nintendo, and after the release of the Virtual Boy, things kind of didn't work out. So he left the company and he made a brand new system, and that brand new system was the Wonderswan. He passed away sadly, but the Wonderswan lived on in Japan with a very big library. Unfortunately, most of those games are in Japanese.
There's a lot of fans of the Wonderswan, so it would be interesting if they did bring it to the system. Again, we don't know at this point.
But if I had to guess,
Go ahead.
If I had to guess the end more, I'm thinking we're finally going to see TurboGrafx. because we saw the TurboGrafx Express way back when, and that essentially was just taking the actual games you had on cartridge on their like little credit card size games, and those games were very portable, so they just made a portable version of the system. I'm not saying the TurboGrafx Express was great, but that form factor for those games leads me to believe they could theoretically do something like this.
I would argue that those games weren't necessarily made for a handheld, and that the whole idea kind of came about after the original Game Boy was such a huge success.
Sure.
So I wouldn't love to see it necessarily integrated into this. I would love Analogue to have their own sort of standalone device. But if it did, like, it could be very cool, because there's something we're going to talk about a little bit later, which is an accessory for this, which would make the form factor more appealing to someone that wants a seated TurboGrafx experience. Let's get into this a little bit more. So we announced Game Gear, Neo Geo Pocket, Color, Atari Lynx. There's going to be adapters for these. So it's not out of the box. You can't play these out of the box.
Your Game Boy games, that's going to be fine, but when it comes to the other systems, Game Boy utilizes the exact same cartridge, and like a cartridge insert at the end. So let's be fair about this, folks. I know a lot of people might be a little upset to hear that they have to get like an adapter, but honestly, if you're going to support one of the portable platforms, the Game Boy was the right move.
It had to be it, and we've seen that the actual the adapters that Analogue has been releasing, they've been reasonably priced. They're not outlandish so far, like for the Mega SG. So this also has 2 FPGAs in it, not just one FPGA chip. So this is actually kind of interesting, especially if you're into the sort of homebrew scene. So there's one FPGA chip that is there to be sort of the chip that is the Game Boy Advance, the Game Boy compatibility, Game Boy Color compatibility. But the other FPGA chip is for developing and importing cores.
Yes.
That's what they said. So, I'm not smart enough to know exactly what this means. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more.
So this is going, like, they haven't been direct with this, so I'm only going to assume what's being said here. They're making a portable system that is going to have a secondary function where it can run its own kind of software or different kind of systems. So theoretically, you could make that FPGA flash and run a bunch of different operating or like systems on it. Apps. Yeah. So it could be anything. Maybe they create, I don't want to see them do this because it would look ridiculous. Maybe they create an NES adapter on it, and then they just have that core, like put a core on there that runs NES games. But I believe they showed off an example where there was some like a music looping sequencer.
Well, this is something that's going to be included out of the box, as far as I know. It's a digital audio workstation with built-in synthesizer and sequencer. We've been seeing a lot of people messing with the sort of chip tunes using original Game Boy hardware.
Oh yeah.
And I guess the Analogue folks, like, people have been poking and prodding them for other ways of using their hardware, and they're like, "Fine, here, you can make music with this thing." And they've literally
go ahead, be Daft Punk.
Yeah, they've literally teased this already, and if you want an example of that, you can find it on their website. They already have some chip tunes up and stuff. So if you're into that, that's fantastic. This looks like an incredibly optimizable, and you can kind of finagle this even more so than some of the other systems, which were already highly customizable and accessible.
Now, what's interesting to me about this is that because I think they're going to allow third-party games to work on here, they haven't talked about any storage inside or anything like that.
Not yet, no.
But let's just bear with me for a sec. We know the resolution of the screen already because they released that. So it's the 3.5-inch LCD. What is the resolution it's running at, Adam?
It's running at 1600 by 1440, which is really important, and it's really cool for your original Game Boy games.
Yes, it is. Why is it really cool, Adam?
Because the original Game Boy, the resolution was 160 by 144. So it's just 10 times the resolution, which means
basically HD Game Boy.
Yeah, it scales perfectly.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Now, you're not going to get ghosting on here. Maybe that's an option where you can like turn it on so you can get ghosting, which would be kind of fun but bad all at the same time.
I would assume that they'd include that, as silly as it sounds, because Analogue does that.
Yeah,
Analogue includes really weird stuff that, you know, people grew up with scan lines and things. They're fully customizable.
Seriously, turn off the backlight and then have the ability to have a ghost. Like you think that sounds kind of stupid, but there's going to be people out there that want that vinyl record scratch. You know, like that's essentially what it is.
We're going back to the days where like you and I, we'd like huddle somewhere with sunlight.
Yeah.
right? To get the perfect sort of angle so we could play whatever, Kirby in Dreamland or...
And Analog's the kind of company I think that would do that. But why I think that resolution is more important than just getting the Game Boy games up, that resolution is way more than they need to run any of the games that they're talking about here. So in my mind, we're probably going to be seeing games made specifically for the platform or games ported over from other systems because you've got a lot of resolution to play with there. You could, like, I mean, I'm not saying we're going to see Shovel Knight, but Shovel Knight doesn't take a lot to run, and an FPGA is powerful enough where they could throw a core on there that's a Linux-based core where they could get something like that running, and I think it'd be great.
Especially if it's a separate core, I imagine you can just keep the one core, doing the Game Boy Advance thing, ready to have the other compatibilities with the other systems, and you have this other core that you're just kind of tinkering around with. Maybe you want to, play something like Shovel Knight on there. It sounds like they're just leaving it up to you. So, we talked about the LCD screen. The models so far that they've shown off are black or white. They look beautiful. I think this is this is a family show. I think this is a sexy machine, Shane. I really do.
Good. Look, it's got a simple look to it.
Yes.
You can see that the D-pad's off to the left, and then you've got 4 buttons to the right. Those are important things. The only thing I don't immediately like about the design, and I think it's more of a Nintendo-focused thing, there's no start and select in the direct center between the D-pad. I think those are going to be off to the bottom right. Which
it looks like it.
And I'm just not a fan of that. Yeah. Maybe when you're playing a Game Boy game, you might not think about that too much, but start and select can be used in a variety of other platforms. So for me, having those more directly in the center is important because where you're going to be gripping the controller, you want it to be very light and very easy to hold. But because of the way it's designed, on the back, you can see that there's shoulder buttons just beneath the cartridge slot.
In the SP style of shoulder buttons, the Game Boy Advance SP.
Yeah. And I mean, that design there tells me that you're going to be holding it in a very specific way. So typically when I see a console like this, any kind of portable system, it's easy for me to kind of go, oh, this is going to be held a certain way or whatever. I haven't seen this being held in hands. I need to get it in my hands to know how it works.
Here's a great thing, though. They've already announced that all buttons are completely mappable.
Oh, sure.
So do whatever you want. Hey, you're playing original Game Boy games and they don't use the bumpers on the back. You can make those the start and select buttons if you wanted to. They're whatever. They want you to tinker with this thing and make it the experience you want it to be.
It's just a personal thing for me. I love to see the start select buttons in the center. That's a thing I'm always going to... Because the thing is, if you're holding it... So I'm just looking at a Game Boy right now. When you hold a Game Boy, your thumb is on the D-pad and your other thumb is on the B and the A, and the select and start are very easy to access. Kind of like in the bottom there, right?
Yep.
But if they're at the bottom, you're going to be moving your hand farther away. So it's a choice that they made. I'm not a fan of that.
I get you.
Yeah.
I get you.
Yeah.
Well, let's say you don't want to play it on this device. We were kind of talking about another form factor for it. It's something that they announced already, and it's they don't have a price point up for it. There's only a few details about it. It is the dock.
Yes.
The dock for the Pocket. The Pocket dock.
This is a big deal.
This
folks.
is cool.
Yeah.
So this unit is you can charge it through USB-C. So I'd imagine that this dock has a USB-C that kind of just pokes in the bottom, a la Nintendo Switch.
Yep.
And then you're playing your games in HD through an HDMI cable on your big screen.
That's a very big deal.
Yeah.
I think that we haven't really seen enough options to play many of the games we're talking about. Game Gear, honestly. A Game Gear on your TV, there are so few options for that. Right. And one of the most impressive options was a community member from out in the wild actually made a Game Gear system that could be outputted, but it doesn't work that well when it comes to the border frames around it. Yeah. They have to do like this color duplication thing. It's a little weird, but essentially there is no official option from Sega that makes it work that well. And there have been a variety of things. It's just nothing like this. Nothing exclusive.
I think at the end of the day, that's the most exciting thing across the board. So Game Gear, having that on your HD screen is huge. But just Game Boy games in general, we've had different methods, even official methods of playing these games on your home television for a long time. From like the Super Game Boy to the Game Boy Advance player for the GameCube.
That's right.
But we were still using AV cables. At most you can wind up with a decent image depending on the cables that you were getting. But we've never had a great way of seeing those things. Now, we had the Woozle kit that a lot of people have been talking about recently, where you basically take...
The Woozle kit.
The Woozle, it's the Woozle RGBA Consolizer Kit is what they've officially called it. And it's basically a fun little kit. This isn't a Woozle. I'm just holding this up right now because you would take, this is not an original Game Boy Advance, but you would take an original Game Boy Advance and you'd basically take out the guts of it and you'd put it into this kit and you would be able to get an HDMI signal out. And it's great. It's wonderful because you're basically playing on Game Boy Advance hardware, but it's a kit. I guess you can buy the unit pre-made, but it's very expensive, or you can make it yourself. And some people just don't want to make things at the end of the day. And Analogue coming in and having something that is not only simple but very well designed. Analogue is so known for just beautiful hardware, right?
Absolutely.
This seems like a very premium way of getting that HDMI signal for your Game Boy Advance and your original Game Boy games.
It seems like a perfect match. And you know, it's funny enough, when we're talking about these game libraries, I like the Game Gear. Yeah, there's maybe 3 Atari Lynx games you want to play. But when it comes to the Game Boy... Chips Challenge.
There's one.
Chips Challenge is good.
California Games.
You really like to play California games?
On the Lynx, it's okay.
Okay.
There's only 2, Shane.
So when it comes to Game Boy in general, maybe the original Game Boy library has a bunch of weird stuff. Some games are interesting and whatever. Maybe Game Boy Color isn't well known beyond it just being color. Yeah. But Game Boy Advance,
preaching the choir, man.
That is one of the best video game libraries. It doesn't even matter that it's mobile. I'm talking the best game libraries of all time. There are so many good Game Boy Advance games.
We were in an era when the Game Boy Advance came out where we were well into what was 3D graphics, and a lot of people thought, okay, no, we're over the 2D sprite-based stuff. But some people kept going, and we knew how to make good 2D sprite-based games back then, and even some of them implemented some rudimentary 3D on the Game Boy Advance. But if you guys haven't dug into the Game Boy Advance library, what better time than now with this unit? You can get the carts for dirt cheap as long as they're not complete in box. And we're talking sprawling JRPGs. We're talking like just across the board, any genre. The Game Boy Advance has so many amazing games.
It's insane.
That are not played. There's a sequel to Gunstar Heroes that no one ever talks about by Treasure on the Game Boy Advance. There's so many great Treasure games. You know, I love Treasure.
For strategy gamers, one of the greatest video game franchises
ever
made was Advance Wars, and it was originally Famicom Wars. Advance Wars didn't seem to carry on to the Switch. But I mean, like, it's an amazing game, and it's available on that platform. Even when it comes to first-person shooters, you don't think about first-person shooters when you think about the Game Boy Advance. But the Game Boy Advance had 3D capabilities and lots of interesting 3D games, and there were first-person shooters on there that legitimately exist nowhere else. Like, there's a Duke Nukem on Game Boy Advance. Just it's its own thing. It has nothing to do with the other games. It's really cool.
Speaking of 3D, there's that Asterix and Obelix game, which looks like it could be on like a Sega Saturn or a PlayStation 1.
It really does.
Which is really incredible. There's games like a lot of people love the Tales series. Tales of insert name here, right?
Yeah.
Well, Tales of Fantasia never officially came to North America. I think the first time it did officially come to North America, I should say, it came to the Game Boy Advance. Tales of Fantasia. If you want to get in on the ground floor with that series, it's on the Game Boy Advance. And a lot of people don't dig into this.
And for anyone out there that is a fan of Earthbound, there is a 3rd game in the Mother series, and that 3rd game is only on the Game Boy Advance.
That's true.
If you're going to play that game, this is the only way to officially play the original cartridge in high res.
And with the tweaking you can do with analog systems, you'll be able to patch in English writing, English script.
So do you get that? Go out and get your Mother 3 carts officially from Japan now as soon as you can.
There's also Mother 1+2 on the Game Boy Advance, which you could probably do something similar with the English translation there.
I believe a fan translation patch was originally released for that gave a full translation of Mother 1, but Mother 2, they didn't bother doing that because that's just Earthbound. You could be playing on the Super Nintendo. Regardless, though, those options are there. Analogue provides these kind of solutions, these kind of fixes. That's what I love about this.
What are some of the things that you'd love to see from this system? We just have kind of a vague idea of what's going on. One thing that I absolutely, I'm almost positive they're going to include a lot of ways to tweak, your experience.
Sure.
The sound on the Game Boy Advance sucks.
That's true.
And in many of the different official ways that you can play Game Boy Advance games, the sound still isn't all that great. Like
It's
playing on a
tinny.
DS
Yeah.
or playing on the Game Boy Advance player for the GameCube. We need something to mess with that. Tinny is right. Fuzzy is a big word that a lot of people always use. It never sounds right. I remember picking up Yoshi's Island, the Yoshi's Island port for the Game Boy Advance. Yes, Yoshi's Island on the go. If you don't have the music, it's just, if it sounds tinny and fuzzy, it's not right.
And this is why I'm so excited for it being an analog system. So, for those of you that don't know, we did review the Mega SG and the Super NT.
Super NT, yeah.
And both of those systems give you so many abilities to modify and change the sound coming out of the system. I've met so many friends who swear that, and it's not exactly one-to-one, right? It's never going to be exactly like the original analog systems, I mean. But when you have the ability to really just work with it, you can get something so close, it's scary. For instance, when you go to play any kind of Super Nintendo cartridge that utilizes extra components inside the cart, it sends a signal through, or electricity through, and that electricity can create a reverberation or a hum. And that hum is audible, and you can hear it. But with the analog, you can get rid of that hum. It's those things, those tiny little things that give you the ability to change things, to modify things, have an equalizer on hand.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
look,
totally.
at the end of the day, the speakers that are on the system are really going to matter. And I hope they're putting in the right kind of speakers in there. They're saying stereo,
It's
right?
stereo, yeah.
So that's a big deal because, original Game Boy?
It's stereo. Stereo capabilities are in here. But it's a mono speaker. So
you need the headphones
that was one of the big selling points back in the day. It was like, this has stereo, but you gotta insert your headphones there.
You had to plug it in. This is the thing, right? There are so many portable games that have great sound, and I do believe that Analog knows what they're doing there. And I don't think this is the kind of company that you'd probably, like, if any other company were to announce they're doing this, you probably wouldn't believe the
hype.
The hype. But they've not only once, twice, or three times, they've done it multiple times, showing off the best hardware imaginable. My biggest concern, the only concern I really have, I actually feel like the D-pad, the buttons are going to feel pretty good, and I'm probably going to get used to the positioning of the start and select buttons. I think I'm going to be fine with that. My only problem, battery life.
Oh.
I don't know how much power an FPGA is going to drain.
Yeah, that's true.
And I mean,
all of these consoles have been like just wired right into your wall.
We're looking at we're looking at speakers. We're looking at a screen. If there's no Wi-Fi functionality or Bluetooth functionality and stuff like that, we don't know if that's going to suck a lot of energy if it's being used. There is Bluetooth low energy, but we don't know if it's even using those things. Just the FPGA, dual FPGAs. We don't know how much energy that's going to take. Is the battery life going to be just a couple of hours, or is it going to last 24 hours?
Yeah.
Personally, I would love to see it last a full solid day. Like
an original Game Boy.
Like an original Game
would
Boy.
last, seemed like dozens of hours back in the day. One gripe or worry that I have, and I'm sure that a lot of other people have this problem, if you do love the form factor of the Neo Geo Pocket or of the Lynx, there's things there that you're not going to get with this. So if you like the clickiness of what the Neo Geo consoles have offered, we did see that Mini come out, the Neo Geo Mini, and the first thing everyone said was, there's no clicky. And then they're like, let's try the pad. There's no clicky. You have a D-pad here now. So not only do you not have a clicky, but you no longer have what is the sort of circle pad that the Neo Geo consoles had. The Atari Lynx, you want to play left-handed? You want to play right-handed? They had a weird system where you had these different modes.
It really is. I don't know how that's going to work.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, it just is what it is, I guess.
Like, you don't even really think about it, right? But like the Game Gear, we think of the D-pad on the Game Boy being the definitive factor for portable games, but on the Game Gear, it's a shield. And it's not the worst shield in the world, but it's still a shield. It's things like that. When you think about Game Boy Advance games, and even Game Gear games to an extent, it does happen. Some of the games have raised brightness, and that was to help play the games in lower dark scenarios. The Game Gear, funny enough, the Game Gear doesn't have that problem because it has a lit screen, but the problem with the Game Gear is that there's a lot of ghosting, and then the colors are kind of muted in ways. I've seen Analogue do really good things with the visual representation of the systems, so I believe they're going to have ways to like alter the colors to be more in tune with the screen, because obviously they're going to have a backlit screen. They're going to make something that looks really, really nice, so I'm excited for that as well.
Just talking about a screen, just, you know, from the beginning standpoint, just Analogue finally has a system that has a screen in it. What are they going to do with this screen? You're bringing up a lot of valid points, but yeah, this is the first time that this company has given us a handheld, so there's so many like what's going to happen sort of questions. So far we're seeing like huge ways of configuring this console, which is a great first step. This was a teaser. We're going to get more very, very soon, and I hope we have some more sort of answers, and we see maybe some of the, what is it, the adapters for the other games and stuff. And
you know, like a thing with this too, I can tell there's a couple of you there. I can see your comments right now. You're saying, oh,
what are you talking about? What? Oh, that?
Why don't I just emulate this on my cell phone? Well, there's a reason why you wouldn't want to do that. Your cell phone doesn't have buttons. That's kind of a big deal. Maybe the cell phone isn't really emulating the games 100%. We showed off, you remember the little system we took a look at, which was basically a package that you'd throw your phone into and you could put games on it?
That was the Hyperboy?
I forget.
The Hyperkin Smart Boy?
Hyperkin Smart Boy.
Hyperkin Smart Boy.
The Hyperkin Smart Boy, when we reviewed that, one of the things I disliked about it the most was when you put the game into the back of the system, it wasn't actually reading the game straight from the cartridge. It would take it, it would load it into the RAM, and then it would keep it there. So you could remove the game and just create a ROM file.
Right.
What you're seeing here is running off the cartridge. This is really important, folks. If you've got game saves, if you've got high scores, whatever it might be, it's going to reserve all that stuff on there.
Or if you just want the experience of playing the game to be the same way as you remembered back in the day, blemishes and all. That's what people want, right? They're like, oh, I played an NES back in the day. I want the weird sort of half sprite flickering and stuff. That people want what their rose-tinted glasses deem, you know, perfect to them. And I feel like Analogue is the one company that's really very much focusing on that.
Yeah. Well, folks, what do you think? Are you excited about this system? Do you think it's something that's worth picking up?
And let's face it, I'm going to pick it up. You're going to pick it up?
Yeah, we're probably going to get it.
Yeah, but we'll see what happens.
Come on. It's a Pokemon portable where we could basically play all the Pokemon games.
You finally going to play all the Pokemon games?
All of them. Okay. All of them at the same time on one system and never, ever have to worry about the battery pack dying. Hopefully. I hope we get the backup saves on the actual system. You know what I mean? Like that's...
We'll see what happens there.
Okay.
Anyway, we're going off on a tangent. Let us know what you think in the comments below.